So I'm still Michael. It's still the Swift Center. It's still a K-8 center funded through the Office of Special Ed Programs with an emphasis on braiding together behavior and academic supports. When I say behavior, I also include social and emotional well-being in there. I don't think about that as separate. Our work is in its 4th year around technical assistance. So we had a 5-year award from the Office of Special Ed Programs. Our first year, as I said in the keynote, we were studying sites around the country that seemed to be making it work, and learning about what were the structures and practices that they were engaged with that was making it work. And then we started with our new sites to see if we could standardize that and now replicate those good practices into new places. We partner with, and I wonder if I've got my map up here. I don't. I'll get to the map in a minute. We partner with New Hampshire, Vermont, Maryland, Mississippi, and Oregon under that grant. We work with 64 schools that are organized into 16 school districts across those 5 states. We work with leadership teams in every arena of the system. So we have leadership teams in schools, leadership teams in districts, leadership teams in states, all with pretty specific communication loops across each arena of the system, so everybody's talking with each other about what they're trying out and how that's working for them. Setting up those teams is the first part of our work. We don't engage if there's just a really charged up principal at a building, but nobody else on board. First thing we're going to do is get a team on board, get a team in place. Same thing at the district level. Same thing at the state level. So people will often ask, well, what do you do first in this work? Set up leadership teams, distribute the work across multiple stakeholders, engaging families in those teams at the decision table as well, whenever possible, whenever viable. We have a commitment to meet people where they're at in our systems. So if they're not ready or used to having a family member on the leadership team, we'll work with them over time to see if we can get them there. Our framework, as I mentioned this morning, is not about doing Swift. I always get nervous when people say, I want to be a Swift school. It's like, really, you don't need another banner outside. You just need the name of your school. That's all you need. Right? Leverage the Swift framework to achieve your vision. Great. Steal our resources and make them your own. Superb. This is not about imposing another initiative onto what's probably already an overburdened system. I use this video called Rethinking the ScaleUp Challenge often. If any of you have not seen it, it's available on YouTube. You can just go to YouTube and type in Rethinking the ScaleUp Challenge. And it gives a framework for the big picture of how we approach our conversations with our partner sites. And usually the first conversation is, what's going on in your system right now, and kind of what do you want it to be? So when you grow up, what do you want to be? What will that look like? And usually the startup point that they're sharing with us is something that looks like this. We have 82 different initiatives underway that are all kind of competing, overlapping, siloed, functioning at cross purposes with other initiatives in our system. Some of them were local choices. We decided to do that to ourselves, and others were imposed on us, district, state, federal, whatever it might be. So we want to help bring coherence to this. So the starting point is figuring out, where do you want to land? What's your desired endpoint in this partnership? Right? It's not just about taking our big 5 domains and saying, well, I want to get good in each domain. I want to fill each of those 5 buckets up. Let's rethink that. What's your ideal school look like? What does your ideal school district look like? Let's describe that. And then let's use that to start aligning your initiatives. How do the things that you have underway align to a vision or a desired endpoint for you within your system? How can they help you get closer to your vision? Right? How do they align to the vision? How do they align with each other? So some initiatives can braid well together, right? When we talk about RTI and PBIS, we can take those and we can say we have a way for bringing those together into a unified system. Excellent. So we've brought from 2 down to 1. Excellent, we can do that. What else is going on? Are there other initiatives underway that are competing or somehow messing up one another, right? Or maybe not as important as others. So what are the natural tensions there? And then what's going to be your best constellation of those initiatives that's going to work for your system? If we've learned nothing else with using our framework, is that it looks different in different schools and different districts. It doesn't look the same in every place that we go. If you do a deeper dive into some of our videos, you'll see that what's playing out in some of our Mississippi schools looks really different than some of the Cecil County, Maryland constellations. Culture, history, context, it all matters. They're all making progress toward their visions and leveraging our framework to get there, but it looks different. There's some common things that we can point to, like leadership teams, like collaborative teams across general and specialized educators, but how those teams come together, how they do that work, may look different from school to school, district to district, state to state. So it's very much not a one-size-fits-all. It's a framework to help you figure out what's the best constellation for us. These domains and features are just the framework for sorting stuff. Administrative leadership for us is about distributing leadership in a system. So we look for things like, is there a distributed leadership team leading the endeavor to whatever your vision is locally? Are families involved in decision making? Is the principal seen as an instructional leader, not a manager? Makes a big difference. And it may not be the principal. Again, this is where it's going to look different in different buildings. If you're in a large building with 3 vice principals and a principal, it may not be the principal who's the instructional leader. It may be one of the VPs. And maybe that works for you. That's fine. Is there a leader who's seen as the instructional leader? And a key decision maker in the system. And strong educator support system is also going to look different in different places. The bottom punchline is, how are you supporting ongoing job-embedded professional learning that's aligned to your vision and working well for teachers and all staff members? So what's that job-embedded learning look like? That's administrative leadership for us. MTSS, I think I hit it this morning, but I'll just say a couple things here. While we have these subsections for academics and behavior, that's really because of some of our measurement stuff. This really is one big bucket where this is all coming together in a tiered approach to instruction. So instruction, assessment, curriculum, all in here. Database decision making in with this. Integrated education framework for us provide buckets for thinking about what's our staffing and service delivery, our organizational structure look like. Staffing and service delivery is going to vary from building to building. What what Freedom Elementary School does with the staff of 7 that they have for their 53 students looks different than Hudson Memorial School that has 821 students. And 100 and something paraprofessionals across the district of only 4 buildings. There's a lot of paraprofessionals in the system. So their arrangement's going to look different than Freedom, right? Thinking about strong positive school culture and climate we know, direct relationship with student achievement, student well-being, how the adults and family members are getting along with one another, right? That's a piece of this, and we know it has a strong influence on student achievement. We want to be paying attention to that. So thinking about that is one bucket. Family and community engagement, fairly straightforward, I think, for now in this conversation, but it's going to look different based on what your priorities are. I may attend to different aspects of family engagement if our vision is about raising student achievement. Then there's a certain set of practices that I'm going to engage my families in, like how do families message to their children about the value of schooling? There's a high effect size on parents saying to their kids that they value the school that the kid is going to, versus sending the kid off every morning saying, good luck, that place sucks, right? Has a negative effect on achievement. So we know that that's one aspect of family engagement. That's different than how do we communicate with families about our educational program? What's the give and take of information sharing across that? Always a two-way conversation. And then finally, a bucket around inclusive policy structure and practice, which really means district to school relationship, school to district relationship. We actually found some schools and districts that weren't getting along with one another. That makes it really hard for a school to kind of take on this big challenge of achieving a bolder vision if they don't have the partnership and positive support of their district, and vice versa. So making sure that's in place, and then a framework at the district arena that allows them to look at policies, guidelines, so think big P policy, small p policy, and the guidance for how practices come together. Particularly in our work, where we're encouraging people to think creatively about roles and responsibilities and funding streams and how to braid those together, we want the leadership to have a way to revise and update policies as needed. So that's a key piece of this. Our theory of action as we start this work, build this first and foremost is what our theory of action has been, and build this school to district relationship. Then we'll take stock of other things that you want to work on and start in those priority areas. But we have a straightforward curriculum on this and on this. And what we've seen in our early data suggests that that was the right choice. And that was based on other years of research that shows that that's going to make a difference in anything you're trying to get in place. So we've actually seen bumps in some schools' quality of their MTSS, not by providing any direct technical assistance on MTSS, but just cleaning up the decision-making and communication loops within the system so that people could open their channels and talk with one another about what they meant by MTSS. We didn't give them any new information. They just did some cleaning up internally. We've worked to think about MTSS now as really the heart of the work, an organizing force for the work, where the admin leadership, the educational framework, the staffing, service delivery culture, family community engagement, and the district partnership as things that all support and serve a full implementation and sustainability of MTSS. We've found that that creates some quick common language for our sites to say, what do we mean by MTSS, and how does that inform how we're going to organize our leadership? What do we mean by MTSS, and how does that inform how we're going to engage our family members? Right? So you see the direct relationships there. We use this equation when we get into the grind of the work with our sites. And I'm going to show you the shorthand version of this in just a second. This comes from leaders in the field of implementation science. These are folks in our country who have studied school change efforts for the last 20 plus years and paid attention to what's working when schools are able to get a new practice in place and have it stick around versus waiting just for that next wave of initiatives to fly at us. So in this equation, you'll see that it's a multiplication equation. We're concerned about having effective practices. Are we selecting from those high-impact instructional approaches, the things that have a strong evidence base behind them, the things that can actually be replicated? There's a difference between having a really good teacher who just makes really great things happen and then figuring out how to replicate that across our system. So if you were in my session yesterday on classroom level arena work, I talked about having an instructional playbook within your building. That's a constellation of effective practices for instruction across content areas. That would be an example of the what we're trying to get in place. An effective implementation strategy is how you go about getting that in place. Do I jump to training everybody on these new practices? Do I first set up a coaching structure for these new practices? Is there particular data I should look at as we're implementing these practices, how do I go about getting those practices in place matters. We find if people jump to training without first developing shared understanding of the thing they're about to try to implement, it doesn't stick around. We find that if people try to just get training without coaching, it doesn't stick around. When people try to just get training but not know like what it's going to look like and how we'll know if we're actually doing it, it doesn't stick around. We've got to put all those things together to support the what. Right? This how basket, the implementation strategy, is exactly that. I think of it as the basket that can carry forward the what that's sitting inside of it. Enabling context. If you're going to change how you're using or leveraging MTSS, if right now you have RTI and PBIS and you're thinking about bringing them together in your building, it's going to create a change in the building. It's going to create a change in the culture. So how are we shifting the culture and the kind of where of the work to support the new approach that you're trying to encourage? For example, if in your new model of MTSS, special educators are going to be working alongside general educators, and maybe that historically has not been happening in your building, you're going to have to change the environment to support that new way of work. We're going to have to work through roles, responsibilities, my self-worth. I got my worth from providing direct pull-out instruction over here, and now you want me to be in this general ed class over here with her, and am I still a special educator? Have I lost my hat? Right? So we've got to change the context to support the new ways of work. If you have all of those three buckets going on, you can get to improved outcomes for kids, for families, for your staff. If you put a 0 into any one of the buckets, it's a multiplication equation, so it zeroes out the whole thing. So I've got really high effect practices I want to get in place, and I've got a great implementation strategy. But we're not changing our culture in our building. 0. 2 out of 3 is not good enough. So the what of the work, the how of the work, the where of the work, all have to get attention during an implementation effort. All three of them need attention if we are to get to full implementation and sustainability of anything that you want to put within that framework. And the why is why we're here. So if all of this is supposed to be for kiddos, and I really want that outcome for my kiddos, then I have to pay attention to the 3 buckets. The what, the how, and the where. I'm seeing supportive nods, so this is resonating, you're getting it. We have 6 core practices that we use, and this is going to address now some of the stickies. So while we have that implementation equation, we have a set of our best practices that we use in the way that we partner with people. Undergirding all of these 6 practices that I'm about to preview is what we call a strengths-based approach. And that is, in anything that I'm doing with you as a partner, I'm searching for what you're doing well. And I'm going to figure out how to build on that. So this is not a gotcha adventure. Right? We're not in this partnership for me to point out to you what you're doing wrong, or what I think you're doing wrong, because what I think you're doing wrong may actually really work well for you locally. That's why you keep doing it. My job is to pay attention and to draw your attention to the strengths within your organization, the strengths within your personnel, and to figure out how to grow that. Let's do more of the things that work well for our students. That will naturally decrease the energy that's around the stuff that's not working or somehow seen as problematic. So a saying that I use often with my colleagues when I'm coaching them is I'll say, energy follows attention. Energy follows attention. Wherever you put your attention, that's where your body energy is going to go. That's where your money energy is going to go. Resources will follow wherever you're putting your gaze. So look at the stuff that's going well. Figure out how to expand that. Look at the stuff that's going well, and then look just past it to the edges of it. How can you grow that out? Right? There's real power in that kind of approach, especially after an era of accountability where people are used to getting dinged all the time. Right? So we've got to bring a new a new feel to this work. So let me reorganize these 6 practices into a graphic that communicates a little bit more transparently how we engage folks. As I said before, our starting point is to put in place teams, leadership teams and implementation teams. We will not engage in an implementation effort with a site without there being a team. Right? This is not about the Swift Center coming in to do something for you. We're going to come in and teach you about how you're going to do it, if you need us to teach you for that. Otherwise, we will just coach you from the side for that. First step, getting teams in place. So when people say, what's the starting point? If I want to pursue this, what should I do when I leave here? First thing, go back, get a team together. Who are your allies? Build that group. Approach your leadership structures within your school, your district. Who's on that group? Is it a real representative group? Is it well distributed across the system? Great. You've got a solid starting point. The next piece we pay attention to is we have coaching conversations with our partners to be upfront that we're here to work ourselves out of a job. So we're always going to be paying attention to getting out of your way to let you do what you do well. That ends up driving how we engage everything else. I'm not going to over-support something because I'm the guy that's from a distance I flew in, and I won't be here tomorrow. So I've got to support you to be as independent as possible. Productive, successful, and as independent as possible. So that's a dance that we do. Once that context is in place, we ask where you want to go. We go to the visioning question, design your future. What's your desired outcome from this partnership? What's your ideal school? What's your ideal school district? What does that look like for students, for family members, for your staff? Related service providers, volunteer corps. Put it through everybody's lens. Describe it in words. Descriptive, specific statements. Don't just say we're going to get more training. Right? We're going to have access to all the technology we ever wanted. Well, for what purpose? What are you getting trained on? What does that look like and feel like? What are you using that technology for? Be as specific as possible. What's your vision? What's your end point? We'll then take all those descriptions working in teams and full school communities, and we'll literally put them up on the wall, individual statements, and we'll do group activities where the statements are sorted for levels of agreement. First, we make sure everybody understands what everybody's saying, and then we start sorting them on a scale of 1 to 5. A 1 is something that everybody has high agreement on. I'm excited to do that. I love the idea of co-teaching. Let's do it. Great. And then a level 2, I'm okay with that. That sounds perfectly fine. A level 3, I have some minor concerns, but you all are really charged up about it, and I really don't want to block it, so I'm going to work to get my questions answered. That's on me. I'll support the group. A level 4, I have major concerns about us moving in that direction. I need to talk about it more before I can get on board with it. Right? My concerns have to be addressed before I can support you on that. I'm not blocking it, but I'm saying not ready to move. A level 5, the lowest level, is no. It's bad for kids, it's bad for our families, it's bad for our staff. Okay? This kind of approach shifts the ownership of the endeavor immediately to the local community. As soon as we finish that activity, this is not about implementing a Swift school. This is about leveraging Swift resources and the Swift framework to get to your desired outcome, your vision for your school. So you're not going to hang a Swift banner. You're going to keep your school's name. And it's going to be the newer, better version of what you want to be when you grow up. So an example, Madison Elementary School. Worked with them in their visioning process. They brought together school board members, family members, people from the community, all the staff. The leadership team took the first approach. They wrote a bunch of descriptive statements out, if only to give a model to everybody else of what was intended here. They brought those statements to the group. Group read through them, added to the pile, we ended up with like 80-something descriptive statements of their ideal school, which is a great start. We said, okay, now let's sort them. So people got into trios, they would read a strip, and they would go place it physically on the wall. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then everybody had a chance to walk through and read all the statements, and you could move a statement down a level of agreement, but you couldn't move it up a level of agreement. So lowest common denominator wins. We really, really value voice. So if you're not on board with that being at a 2 and you really need it to be at a 3, then you just move it down. That's absolutely fine. You're not okay with that one and you want it moved down to a 4, move it down to a 4. You just can't move it back up. When they finished that activity, they had 60 some odd statements in the level 1 and level 2 categories. Holy crap. That should keep us busy for a little while. Let's start there, which is exactly what we did. We had some things that were over in the 3s and 4s that they wanted to keep talking about. They didn't have anything in a 5, which also really gave them some momentum. Like, we're already kind of on the same page here. This is good. We didn't know this about one another. So we started with the 68 strips, and then a year later we come back and we check in. Are we all still on board with those first 68 statements? Any of those need to be dropped out or changed or updated? What about the ones where we had questions and concerns? How are those going? Do some of those get moved up into the work pile, or they need to stay here? Where are we at with those? So this is a living document. It's a living process within the school community. Because a year into the work, you start to have different ideas. Right? It's sometimes the, what were we thinking? Oh my God, this is huge. And other times it's, we weren't thinking boldly enough. We can do bigger. We can do more. So that visioning piece then sets the tone for everything else. Right? Now I'm coming in not to help you implement Swift. I'm helping you to get to those 68 indicators that you've put out there. We crosswalk those indicators back to the Swift framework. So we'll take those 68 and we'll say, where do they fall within the 10 domains and features? In all the schools where we did this, we had alignment of all the indicators somewhere within the domains. That was really helpful. It was validating for us as a center and validating for the schools to say, okay, so your stuff's going to line up with where we want to go. This is cool. This is good. Now we're ready to partner. And we do that through an adoption vote. So everybody in the school, minimally, school level, has to say yes. 85% of them or more have to be in agreement with proceeding. If not, you bring it back down. So some of your questions on your stickies are about buy-in. And what we're advocating is move that buy-in from an individual conversation to a school-wide conversation. Right? You're actually going to get much more power that way in the conversation, much more energy behind it. People you never knew were going to be on board. Suddenly when they see their own words on the wall, they're on board. The data part that we do next is the current reality. It's a snapshot of what's happening now. So if those statements are where you want to go, what's it currently look like? What do your student outcomes look like? What's the status of all the stuff you're trying to get in place right now? So if you're doing RTI for academics, what does that look like now? It's the current reality. How do you currently implement things? So we look at why data, student outcome data. We look at what data, the implementation status of things. And we look at how data. How do you go about your work? Contrast current reality with where you want to go, and sort out some priorities. So what's the difference between those two things? And then that becomes the beginning of our continuous improvement cycle. So you do a basic gap analysis out of all the things that are not yet in place that we want to strive toward. What are the logical starting points? And there are usually 2 buckets of starting points. Some of them are the quick wins, which for some schools or teams becomes really important. Let's give them a quick win. They need some success. It's been hard on them. I sat with Milton Elementary School. It's probably their 3rd meeting into our partnership, and I met with their school leadership team. And I'm talking about, bold visions and things they might want to do differently, and showing them videos and just trying to brainstorm with them. And this one woman is sitting just like you. She got her arm folded and she's staring me down. She's having none of it. She says, Okay, this is all great. But you realize we are the lowest performing elementary school in this state. Yeah, I get it. So? And there was just silence. I mean, do you want that to determine what you're going to be next year? Your approach thus far has gotten you here. And it's been based on trying to fill holes. What if instead of filling holes, you just reconceptualize the whole shebang? Draw a whole new picture for yourself. What could that be like? She was not quick to adopt. Some of her teammates shared her concerns. We started with a quick win list. What are things you can change? Because they felt very disempowered. They felt very beaten down. Let's get you some quick wins. What are some things you can do that we can get in place for you right now? Those may not be the big, hairy, messy challenges that people say are really important to get in place, but they're the things that are going to give you the momentum to get to that next bucket that you want to get to. So the gap analysis is sifting through your set of priorities. Think about it in terms of an IEP. If you've ever seen an IEP that has 52 goals on it, you know you're not going to meet all those goals. Like, what are you thinking? If energy follows attention and you want my attention on 52 goals, I ain't got that much. Right? Like that's not going to happen. We try to get our schools and our districts down to 2 to 3 priorities. 2 to 3 things that are really important for them to get in place. And once those are well underway and those are getting in place, we've got plenty of things that we all agree on that we can add on to that list. But let's pick 2 or 3 things that we're really going to do well. Yes, there's a long have-to list that we know happens every single year. Things we have to get done, we have to do. Out of all of that, what's really important to you? Let's make sure that's done well. And then we'll keep evolving from there. And it's hard to talk people off of the 5 or 6. Can I just add one more priority in there? But we have to do this next year too, so let's just throw that into next. Okay, now you've got 10. You're decreasing the likelihood you're going to get any of this done well. Yeah, but we have to do it all. You say that. Will it actually all be done? But we have to submit that to the state for our plan. Write whatever you want in your plan. We'll manage with the state later. What do you want? What's important to you? Right? So really situating it back locally and reminding people the reality of their work. Very important. Once we have those priorities, then we narrow in. So let's say the priority was, and I gave this example before, family engagement. You then say, for what purpose, for what end? Is it family engagement for raising student achievement? Is it family engagement for shared decision-making within the school system? Is it family engagement for enhancing our MTSS because we want to improve how we communicate about kids' educational programs? Very, very different paths of specific practices you might want to get in place there. So once you have a big priority, you're still going to drill down to say exactly what's the what box that you want to go after. And we have tools for doing that. So far, here's what I've told you. I've told you about our visioning process, the adoption, the buy-in process, and how we do it at whole scale, whole school conceptualizing, which is very different than the one kid at a time stuff that I shared with you that we've done historically, because I'm telling you, it doesn't work. It doesn't stick around when we do it that way. And it's painful for me to say that in front of family members. As a family member of somebody with a significant disability, I know it's really hard to hear that message. My cousin is not fully included right now, and I know that we can't do it just for him. We have to go after the whole system. So we start with visioning, everybody engaged. We take data snapshots, what's our current reality, and we do that every year. Recheck the vision, recheck the current reality, set the next big priorities. So far, not rocket science, right? Maybe a little bit. She's like, well, a short degree. Priority and practice planning, a structured approach for once you identify your what that you want to do, the priority and practice planning process is that how and that where. So we actually have a 2-page cheat sheet for the evidence-based things that should be in your action plan. Like people draw these blank pieces of paper and they say, who's going to do what when? And how will we know when it's done? Just tear that crap up. You do not have to generate action steps. There's a science behind it. It's been studied for 20 years. We've boiled it down to 2 pages. You look on that 2-page sheet and it will tell you, here's what you should be doing at this stage of the work. And then you translate that over to the what that you're trying to implement. It's right on our website. I'll show you where it is. Download it, take it, make it yours. Don't reinvent the wheel. Resource mapping and matching, huge part of our work. We believe strongly in not taking money and just throwing it out windows. If that's how you want to spend your school budget, that's great. We're probably not the right partner for you. If you want to just hire a bunch of local consultants to come in and try to fix things for you, we're going to advise you to use your resources differently. Resource mapping and matching has to do with once you've identified your what, we're figuring out how that's going to be supported with training, with coaching, with problem solving. So in resource mapping and matching, as part of the planning process, we're going to ask, okay, so once everybody's trained, who's going to be coaching them when they're trying to make sense of it in their classrooms? If you don't have a coaching plan, you might not want to do the training yet, because the research is really clear, and I shared this in the other session. 10% implementation rate, 85% implementation rate. Where do you want to be after you've spent $30,000 on something? You want the full implementation rate. So let's talk about the job-embedded coaching. Resource mapping and matching. Is there some place free where you can get that before you pay somebody to come in and do it? There's an amazing number of well-funded national centers who have websites, who have great online training systems that are free. Your tax dollars have already paid for them. The IRIS Center. How many of you are familiar with the IRIS Center? Database problem solving, good literacy instruction, like pick something. They've got a module on it. It's amazing. IRIS, like the flower, center. Florida Reading Research Center. You want to know what works in, like, stop there first, right? There's great stuff already out there. What Works Clearinghouse, right? And if you're not sure what's already out there for free, come to our website. We've been vetting it all. So we're kind of a little hub for like, stop here to see where else I want to go. Right? We're the mall building, and we'll point you to the stores you might want to check out here. We're like the hotel concierge. We're not going to replicate something that somebody else has already done. That's just not good use of resources. And we're also going to ask you to look locally. So we worked with a district that really wanted to do more around behavior instruction in their building. Excellent. Yes, the Swift Center does have on staff national leaders in PBIS and behavior instruction. But flying one of us in to do that training did not make sense in that state because they have a massive, well-respected, state-run PBIS network that comes with free training and coaching. Why fly us in? We're very pretty, but we're 8 states away. This is your local resource. If you want us to partner with them to support it, maybe that makes sense. But let's look at the local resources first. So being really strategic. If we're working with a district and they've got 3 schools that all want to do something in the area of reading and they're going to have to invest somewhere, let's not have it be 3 different choices. Is there a way that we can pool this effort? Right? That kind of stuff. It seems like common sense, and yet it's not the day-to-day practice. It's the end of the year and I've got this much left in my budget. Let's make that more purposeful. Gosh darn it. I already talked about teaming and coaching and facilitation. Okay. That is the big picture what and how of the Swift Center's work. Did you get it? Check. Okay. So that hits buy-in, starting places. Let me hit the do you work with schools in Indiana. I'll just take that one right off the table for you right now. Our OSEP funded work, the free work that we're doing, is already contracted out to the 5 states that we currently work with. So those 64 schools are it for that round of funding. We are waiting for the feds to release a new competition, which we will enter and try to get refunded. We're just not sure when it's going to come out. We are going for other funding to be able to do free things with schools. For example, we've been developing a data wall, which is kind of a data hub for districts to use to be able to pull together all of their academic, behavior, climate data into one place, all of their implementation status data into one place. So imagine being able to be a principal in a building and calling up fidelity data about reading interventions next to your student outcome data to see if you're actually delivering what you intended and have that conversation next to what you're getting out of it. Like, that's really helpful to know. Because if I've got high fidelity and low outcomes, maybe we're doing the wrong stuff. If I've got low fidelity and low outcomes, maybe I want to check my coaching system over here. Right? So it can be really helpful for decision making if I have efficient use of that data in a way that gives me the data to make good decisions, not just gives me data to futz around with and rechart. So we're writing for a competition to be able to test that out. We've now done it with 2 districts and refined the systems. We'd like to go larger scale with that. So it wouldn't be all of the Swift work, it would just be the data wall and a specific decision-making strategy to go with that. So keep checking our website for those kinds of opportunities. We also do contract work. We just contracted with the state of California for all of the schools in California. There's a handful. To do MTSS implementation statewide. So we're working with the state and the regional teams for them to define MTSS. So we're giving them lots of our materials and facilitating a process for them to say, here are our agreed upon essential elements for MTSS, and then supporting them to lead the implementation effort. So we co-develop all the materials, and then we co-deliver with them, state team, regional team, district teams, who are then leading schools. So we're not directly in those schools at this point. So we do that kind of contract work. We'll also contract with an entire district. We don't contract with individual schools. Okay. All means all but. I like this question. I have a workshop that I do called But What About? But what about? And then fill in the blank. What about Stephen? When you say all means all, do you really mean her? Yeah, we do. So let me go back to the framework and to MTSS. How do we best support students with significant behavioral needs in the middle level? I love the specificity of the question as well. That's awesome. Here are some things that we think about. Our starting point, and I conveyed it, I think, in this morning's keynote, is if you live in this neighborhood, and I'm a district or school leader, then my job is to figure out how to design the system to serve you who live in the neighborhood, regardless of how you come. The research is really clear that it's important to go to your local schools, particularly for kids with more complex support needs. Leverage your local network. So, yes, I mean those kids. We mean those kids. And some starting points are to look at the quality of your overall behavioral instruction and support system. So and you can self-identify or not, are you all familiar with the TIFI, the Tiered Fidelity Inventory in PBIS work? One person is. Okay, so there's a new resource you'll want to check out. It just came out last year, year before last? Year and a half. Tiered Fidelity Inventory, and I'll show you where you can access it on our website if you'd like. They've boiled down a set of best practices in behavior instruction that are kind of an upgrade to some of the prior tools that they were using to kind of size up the quality of the behavioral support system in schools. The Tiered Fidelity Inventory would be a great starting point to take stock of your current system. Right? So whenever I'm given a student-specific questions, I immediately situate that back in what's the structure or the system that would support that for any other kiddo, which is a shift in thinking. We've had this habit, particularly in severe disability land, of making it be all about this one individual kiddo. And in our center's work, we're lifting our gaze from the individual and say, what are the structures behind that question for that one kiddo? Because if it's not working for you, chances are there's somebody else that it's not working for. Cecil County, the district I'm going to talk about in the next session, we were getting a lot of individual kid behavior questions, and they were all secondary questions, very similar to the sticky that I was just given. And we backed up and we said, okay, so what's going on? This can't be about these 3 kids across 24 schools. There's got to be something else going on here. So we took the TIFI, the Tiered Fidelity Inventory, we took just the Tier 3 indicators, and we met with the school psychs and the special ed leaders and principals, stakeholder group from across the district. And we said, we're going to read you a series of statements, and you tell us whether or not these are in place in your buildings. They were in place in theory. Right? There was a guidance document on the district website that said this is what we intend to do, but in practice it wasn't happening. It really wasn't about those individual kids. It was our Tier 3 system of behavior support is kind of weak here. We do a thing that we call a functional behavioral assessment, but it's not really a functional behavioral assessment. There's not a function-based behavior plan to be found in the system. Okay, well, there's something to pay attention to. Maybe it's not about that kid. Maybe we're not providing the right support. Which sparked a larger question about staffing arrangements and who's going to do those things. And we thought it was your job, and you're saying, no, it's her job, and she's saying, it's the school board's fault, right? Like, where else can I shift this? Once we had 3 pointing fingers, we knew, okay, this is not anybody's fault. We're all in this. Let's now shift our energy over to what are some solutions? What can we do next? So, is there high quality instruction across all tiers of the system? For kids who need more intensive behavioral support, go to the Tiered Fidelity Inventory, look at the Tier 3 indicators and say, are we doing that? That would be the starting point. Read up on what are essential elements in a functional-based system and do an honest check in your system about whether or not you're actually doing that. In the meanwhile, if this is on Monday, this kid is coming back to school and we're still in crisis mode, short term, get a group together. First attention, support the supporters when a kid's in crisis. Right? Make sure that your supporters aren't frying on you as well. Second good thing to do is always to ask the kiddo what's going on. If you haven't asked the child yet, that would be the next stopping point. And we often don't, right? We default to our checklists and our things that we're observing, and we write a plan, but nobody actually sat down with the middle school student and said, so what's going on? So just to double check to make sure that you're asking the kiddo. And if they can't talk, ask other kids around that kiddo who can talk. I have a friend, Beth Dixon, and her son has limited speech, and he has a lot of behavioral stuff in his life. And she has purposefully kept a large circle of kids who talk his age throughout his life because they know what's going on for him, and she can't figure it out. But they see it developmentally. So they're like, oh, this is what he needs. Okay, great. Excellent. That just saved us a trip to the emergency room. So I did the buy-in, staff instructions. What questions have I not gotten to? There's some secondary questions. What does a day look like for students working on a certificate of completion? Can somebody tell me more about that question?
Yeah, like when you're talking about like your inclusion model,
yep.
Are you saying that for an entire day, even students that aren't on like an I-STEP or a lot of I-STEP, but like that aren't taking the state tests aren't going to get a high school diploma? Is their day going to look exactly like someone that is going to?
So this is where we go back to the local context. And I would say, how are you set up for dealing with that for all kids within your system? So in a town that I have done some work with back in New Hampshire, they have kind of a college prep track and they have kind of a voc track. And there are lots of options within those two general tracks. Lots of options. So if a kid is not diploma bound in either of those tracks, where do they go? They could go in either. I probably would not advise creating a third track. 2 is plenty right now, and I would start personalizing from there. What makes sense? So in Jacob's case, his father in the video this morning made it really clear. The value was about being a member in this community. He was really less attached to what the product was going to be at the end. He wanted it to be a good, positive membership and belonging experience for his son. So I would look to the values of the family. I would look to the values of the local system. I would not advise kind of force plugging. You have this label or your certificate track, thus we're going to put you in the voc track versus the college prep track, because either might work. It might be related to the quality of the instruction that's available. Right? So some kiddos, when I've problem solved with teams, I've said, well, who are the teachers that give the best tier 1 instruction? Why don't we start there? If we have no other idea of what to do that's right, let's put them in the room that has the highest quality instruction. Because chances are that will be a more supportive environment for the kiddo, which will make it more successful for every other kiddo in the room, which will make it more successful for the staff. So these are just some quick brainstorms for you. Is this giving you a place to start? Okay. Supporting high school kids new to Gen Ed.
I have a bunch of students who are 18, 19, 20, who have never been in a Gen Ed class at all, ever. And I find they're very isolated from their peers.
Yeah.
I'm sort of the option. I'm in Gen Ed hallway.
Right.
So they get sent to me so they can walk in the halls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Not ideal.
Yeah. No, not at all. The first group I would ask would be them. You're good with choice making. I heard you describing what you do earlier, right? I would give them a bunch of choices. That would be my first place. What are your interests? Here's some things we're thinking about for you, like science class, math class, got an interest. Let's do some informational tours to those rooms. Start introducing kids to kids. Sometimes it's more so about individual relationships. What was the school district that had the video earlier where kids were... Well, hello. There's an example. Ask the kids without disabilities what to do. Right? So when the adults don't know what to... turn to the kids. They're brilliant.
They are.
They really are. So I would ask the kids from those videos, here's the challenge. This kiddo's never been in a general ed class, and we're thinking we want to switch that up. He's not been able to signal to us where he would like us to start. What are your ideas? Get them to help you out with that.
Getting that count?
There we go.
Okay.
Is that the right answer? I won't get anybody in trouble. Okay, good. Excellent. I think that's all your questions from up here. How much time do I have left? Shannon?
15 minutes.
Excellent. Beautiful. Let's do a resource hunt, shall we? Tell me something you want to learn about that you might find on the Swift Center website, and we'll go find it. Service delivery models. What is your name?
Jada.
Jada? I love that. Service delivery models coming up. So let's go to the Swift Schools website. It will welcome you like this. You'll get a little pop-up that asks you to sign up for our newsletter because we just want everybody on our mailing list. So please sign in. From there, we have sections of the website. We have the Swift guide. That's where you can go to the domains and features and you can click on a general area and start drilling down to find a website, a podcast, a publication, a tool, an assessment. You can just start drilling down. Swift Talk and Swift Unscripted are our blogs and our podcasts, also very gripping, much more chatty. Swift Playbook is all that vision and data and priority and practice planning stuff that I talked about. That's our instructional playbook, the 6 go-to things that we do to engage schools. So I'm probably not going to find it there. Swift Shelf, any and all of our things that we've made that we publish. So journal articles, newsletters, webinars, videos that we've made are all, you'd find them in the bookshelf, right? You could pull them off. Family and community, all materials have been vetted to be family friendly. Everyday language stuff. So from that, I'm guessing Swift Guide. Let's start there, because you want service delivery models. You want content. No? You want to go someplace else first? Okay. So I click on Swift Guide. It's going to open up a new page, organized by the domains and features. So now I just start drilling down. Where do I find service delivery models within the 10 features? Or the 5 domains? Which of these 5 domains is where I'm going to find service delivery models? Take a guess. Process of elimination. Integrated education framework. Excellent. Let's check that one out. So we've got organizational structure here. Let me click that. And each page will open with, if you want, a short video on what that is, and a discussion guide, if you want to engage somebody in that conversation. Then we have steps to get you started. So that's your interest area. We'll give you, here are 5 things you might want to try to do in that area. And for any one of those 5, there's a drop-down menu. So there's another 3 to 5 underneath that. So you just keep drilling down if you're looking for ideas. But you want service delivery models. So if I go back to this main page, I start scrolling through. We have codes for publications, tools, videos, websites. Under publications, we have service delivery models. Oh my God! Let's click there! Although that one really needs to get relabeled, because this is not just about service delivery models for paraprofessional supports. This is Michael G. Greco's work. And the first article on his website is Proactively Building Inclusive Special Ed Service Delivery on Solid Grounds. Maybe that's what we want. So I can click on that article, and I can get it downloaded, and I can quickly flip through it to see if it's what I want. Now, when I get to the graphics, he has really fun cartoons in his work. So he actually has laid out data-based service delivery models for paraprofessional utilization. He has this great equation around special ed teacher ratios. Have you all heard of this before? What's the ratio of dedicated full-time equivalency, full-time staff in special ed, to the entire student population? He actually has a scale. So if you look at the number of kids in your school and the amount of special ed staff you have, he has a health rating scale. Can let you know whether or not that is a positive environment. But he has ratios for thinking about co-teaching models, how to float paras, grade level arrangements, school-wide arrangements for elementary and for middle schools. I know, it's a gold mine. It's a freaking gold mine. So this is what we do. We sit around and we read a bunch of stuff and we're like, oh, this one's good, put it in the mix, right? Okay, and if it's not there, you click on the Contact Us button at the bottom and you say, I'm wondering about X. And we have somebody who monitors that email box and goes and finds X for you. I know! Next thing you want to find. Give me another resource.
The tiered fidelity.
Tiered fidelity inventory. So, which header do you want to go under?
Probably under the guide.
Probably under the guide. And then under what?
Probably administrative.
You think administrative?
Weird. I'm not sure.
Well, there's one that says behavior. Not that I'm giving you a nudge.
That sounds like a good place to go.
Let's go to behavior. And then we scroll down. Under publications, tools, school-wide PBIS tiered fidelity inventory. It's like it's magic. Ask and you shall receive. And then we have the tiered fidelity inventory. Oh. Next. I love what we've done here. We built this from scratch. There was nothing. And in 4 years, we've just been listening really hard. What are people asking for? Let's look at what's out there and get it organized for them. Again, it's about resource mapping and matching. We just don't want you spending money on stuff or searching for something so hard.
Specially designed instruction and co-teaching.
Specially designed instruction and co-teaching. Oh my gosh. Okay. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to look? Swift guide? And then where do you want to go? I know, choices. Which? Okay. And are we going for the organizational structure side or the positive school culture side? Okay, let's check there. So under publications, we're looking for co-teaching and specially designed instruction. Nothing under publications. Oh, but there is an evidence-based practices for students with severe disabilities. Who was asking me for that? It was in the prior session, somebody was asking for that. They finally posted it. Whoa. It's approaching it, but it's not really yet, is it?
No, but it's like, it's impossible to find time with your co-teacher.
Right, which is why we need a school-wide intervention for that. We don't want to leave it up to you. Let's create that for you. So she said, I did a search for it. So tell the group how you did search.
There's a little magnifying glass,
Okay, so in the upper right-hand corner of the web page, there's a magnifying glass, and if you click on that, you can do search this guide. So I can just put in my key terms there. So let's do specially designed instruction, and go, and no results. We don't care at all about SDI, which is wrong, because there actually is a place, it's just not coded under SDI. So Dawn Miller and I, a colleague of mine at the center, did a webinar on MTSS and special education. Were you in my session yesterday? Well, that's why you're looking for that resource, because you don't have my handout. We did an analysis of SDI relative to differentiated instruction, component analysis, and then provided framework samples for how you can think about SDI and DI together, which then leads to being able to co-teach with common language. So we think it's kind of brilliant. But so the handouts are on your drive, right? If you want to watch the webinar that we recorded, you would go to Swift Shelf. Okay, then you'd scroll down past issue briefs and papers, but stop there sometime because there's some fun papers. Past films and videos. And a reminder, as I said this morning, all of our videos can be downloaded to your local drive. You don't have to watch those online. You can actually take them. To webinars, and there it is. There's a webinar on MTSS and special education. All students, one system, continuum of supports, and that has SDI in it. We do not have a co-teaching webinar yet. That's odd. If you need co-teaching resources, I mean, you know Marilyn Friend is here, and like, I'm willing to offer you my resources, but Marilyn Friend's in the house. So you might want to call on her. A few books out there, I think. But if you want some, I have a collection of kind of go-to things that I use. Just drop me an email and I'll send them over to you. And on SDI, I think it was Utah. Let me just check that. Yes, it was. Utah, the state of Utah, put together a whole packet of materials on SDI, DI, and MTSS, and they really went way into the weeds of roles and details and alignment, and it's really quite brilliant. We just don't have it posted yet on our site, but if you Google Utah Specially Designed Instruction, you should find it on the web. Again, if you can't, email me, and in the subject line, just put SDI Utah, and I'll send you the files. They're great. Great for teaching, great for handing to a school and letting them run with it. Okay, so you're seeing how this works? And if you don't see what you want, go down to the bottom of the page, click the Contact Us button, Swift@KU, and somebody will get back to you. Oh, yeah, so University of Kansas is the fiscal house for the Swift Center. They're the lead. So University of New Hampshire, we're a support to their work. We're in partnership with their work. But they're the leads. Wayne Saylor, Amy McCart are the co-directors for the center. They're at KU. Yeah, we're kind of all over we've got leadership all over the map. But they're the primary lead. Yeah, UCR, Jim Knight, Sim stuff. Yeah, some great stuff's come out of Kansas. Yeah. We out of time? 4 minutes. Last questions. You're welcome. We have a great team of people who we've gone through, I think, 4 iterations of our website before we landed on this design, because we just kept tasking it out on usability. We just wanted it to be really friendly. So I think we're getting there. If you come across something that you want to submit to us, you're like, oh my gosh, all schools should have access to this, again, just email it to our site. We're always open to vet new materials. Okay. Our OSEP grant goes through this October. The current grant goes through this October. As I said, we've contracted with California, so we've got plenty of work that will keep us busy for the next couple of years. A few schools over there, be fine. And we've started doing direct district contract work as well. And we're waiting to hear on an IES grant, a development grant, triple E, triple I, something grant. I don't know. We've got a bunch in the hopper. We're going to be around for a while. We're not going anywhere. Yeah. In some form or fashion. All right. Enjoy your bonus 2 minutes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.